Today's June the 16th, 2022. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. And today with me is Dr. Marilyn Middlebrook, who has been with OSU since 1983 in various roles. And so going on 40 years. She is the Associate Athletic Director for Academic Affairs. And prior to coming to the athletic department, served as the Director of Academic Services in the OSU College of Education. I hope I've got that right.
You do.
All right.
It was the College of Education at that time.
Well, thank you for letting me come today.
You're welcome.
Let's begin with learning something about you. Start wherever you like.
Well, I was born and raised in a small town of Lebo, Kansas, Lebo. It was a town of 600 people until I was in grade school. And then my parents moved us to the city, as far as we were concerned, which was Emporia. And it certainly wasn't a city. It was, at that time, probably 10 to 13,000, somewhere in that range population. And I lived there until I graduated from Emporia State University, which at that time was Kansas State Teachers College. Now they have our certificates and diplomas and so on as Emporia State, but at that time it was KSTC. And after graduating, I went to teach in Colorado and was there for 4 years, teaching high school and junior high until my husband got called up during the Vietnam crisis. Mm-hmm. He was a naval reservist and got called up to go on active duty. So I found out I was pregnant at that time. So in those days, couldn't be pregnant and teach. So yeah, does sound strange nowadays, but at that time, the school district wouldn't let us be pregnant and teach. We could have a child and teach, but we couldn't be pregnant. So I chose to go back to Emporia and live with my folks while he was away. He was overseas. And then he came back and we had 2 more children. I was on faculty at Emporia State. I finished my master's degree there in counseling. And then, I have to go historically here, what did I do? I taught, and then he came home and he took a job in Sioux City, Iowa. And we were there for a while, and then it starts. We traveled all over the country to different business opportunities. It was always a promotion and a bigger opportunity for him. But I was raising 3 children. I was a homemaker, stayed home with the kids, and we moved lots of different places. The last one we moved was to Cushing, Oklahoma in 1982. And we lived in Cushing for 10 years before moving to Stillwater, although I worked at Oklahoma State. But we decided at one point, we had 3 kids at Oklahoma State going to school. I was here working at Oklahoma State University, and my son had all of his business over here. So we thought, why are we commuting from Cushing? So we moved to Stillwater then in 1992. And then I went forward from there. I was in the College of, where was I first? Actually, we were in the College of Arts and Sciences because I taught in the health physical education area. And did leisure activities like golf, swimming, headed up one of the swimming programs there, taught water safety instructors. I was very active athletically and loved teaching it, and taught golf, dance, and then some theory classes. And then during that time, finished my dissertation, finished my doctorate, finished my dissertation, and took a full-time position as the director. I wasn't the director to start with. I was an advisor in the College of Education. And then Don Siemens, who was the director at that time, had a occipital stroke and in his eyes and lost his peripheral vision. So had to go into retirement. And the dean offered me the director's position. So I was there for about 9 or 10 years before I was offered this position by President Halligan. He wanted me to come over and do this job. So I've been here since the summer of '97 in athletics. And I'm not actually with athletics as such. I'm actually in the academic affairs unit. So we are the only one in the Big 12 that has the academic portion of athletics reporting to someplace other than athletics. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are the one that has held firm on it, and we report I was housed with athletics. My title says Associate Athletics Director. Everything is around athletics. I deal only with student athletes, but in reality, I report to the provost.
Okay.
Which I think is a great arrangement. I hope they never change it. It's not financially the best decision because we have two separate budgets we have to work with. We have to work with the state budget, and then we also have to work with athletics. So it becomes a bit confusing. The foundations are a little different with each. So we've had to kind of learn two jobs within one because we in reality have two bosses we report to. When I say we, I'm talking the whole unit.
Well, before we get into that a little bit, let's back up a little bit.
Okay. So that's where we are right now.
That's where we are. Okay. And we'll talk about this facility a little bit later because it's important to talk about how this came about too. But I want to go back and put some dates on this timeline a little bit if we can.
Okay.
Graduated from high school in what year?
1960. I had to think of what it was. 1960.
And then Emporia with your bachelor's in
64.
64, and then your master's.
71.
Okay. And somewhere along in there, you met and married your husband.
Yeah, we did. We got married in 65.
65. Had you met him at college?
No, I met him in a bowling alley in Colorado. Yeah. While I had a date with another guy. He was waiting on me to get over our bowling time there. So, yeah. Yeah, my grandkids love to hear that story.
Well, did you have siblings?
I have a sister who lives in Michigan City, Indiana, and a brother who is alive still and lives in Waterloo, Iowa. I'm the only one that's out of the nest to the south. All the rest of them are in the north.
And where are you in the order?
I'm the middle child.
Middle child. And had your parents gone to college, or were you first generation?
I don't know how we define first generation in this case because my mom and dad both went to a year of college. But that was in would have been, let's see, Mom was born in 1908 and Dad in 1909. So late 20s, early 30s. And they were both very talented people. One was a composer and a phenomenal jazz pianist. And he did silent movies. He did the music behind the silent movies and then went on to New York and did lots of gigs there. And then my mother was a professional dancer. And she went to school for a year until the Ku Klux Klan burned out her dad's butcher shop because they were Catholics. And they burned his butcher shop to the ground. So she couldn't continue with school. So she went to New York, met my dad in New York. And they got married. They stayed in show business for some time until that's an age-sensitive type of profession. And so then she went back and ran it. He went to work for what was then the CAA, the Civil Aeronautics Association. Yeah, Civil Aeronautics Association, not association, that's CAA, whatever that was. And it's now the FAA. So he worked for them until he died. And Mom ran a dance studio for 30 or 40 years.
In Kansas.
And they went back to Emporia.
Mm-hmm. How did you decide what your major was going to be?
Originally, my bachelor's?
Yeah.
I had no intentions of going to college, but I wanted to be what they called then an airline stewardess because that's what my sister was. She was with Frontier Airlines, and I was going to follow her footsteps. But I didn't get my application in on time, so Dad said, well, you have to do something, so you better go to school. So I went to college. And the only thing I really loved was music. Well, the two things I love, music and sports. And I actually was offered money, and it wasn't very expensive to go to college then. But I was financially offered a scholarship in music and went for one semester in that before I decided, no, they're going to ruin my fun of music, I love music, because I had to learn all this theory and I had to do all this book stuff. Well, I just wanted to play piano and learn the guitar. So I changed. My second love was sports. And I was very athletic. I loved all sports. I was a competitive swimmer. And so I had an opportunity then to do that. So in those days, what you do, there were no real sports for women as such. Mm-hmm. So I went into physical education, which was the closest that I could the closest I could get to sports, and it was the only way I could work out with the guys in my sport of swimming. And so that's where I ended up.
So
I loved every minute of it.
that's kind of explains then how you taught that when you came here.
Mm-hmm.
OSU doesn't have that anymore, though, does
No,
it?
they don't, and I was in the heart of that too, and very disappointed. Lowell Kennedy, I don't know if you remember Lowell.
The name I remember.
Lowell was here. Lowell fought hard. He was the head of what we then call, it's hard to remember all the different names they give us. As I recall, originally it was Health, Physical Education, and Recreation, HPER. And then they changed it, and when they did, the regents decided that we could no longer give credit for anything that was an activity-based class, which I might add is still in force today. And I think personally is wrong, but that's my own political agenda on that one. We fought it hard to keep it in, but they said we couldn't do it. You can go to some of the lots of very good schools, and they require that they have physical activity. But that's a whole philosophical argument that would take days for us to talk about. But anyway, that's at that time you received college credit. If you took tennis or bowling or any of those, you'd get college credit for it.
That would have been
So it took a lot of people to teach those things.
Would have been in the 80s. When did they stop, roughly? You don't have
I would say late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah.
And did they have a swim team at that point?
They had a swim team, a gymnastics team, and those were both associated with athletics. And they did away with those, but I wasn't in athletics then. I was over at the Colvin Center, so I wasn't terribly interested in what they were doing with the athletics side of it so much as we knew we would still conduct classes for the population, but it really wasn't the same once they did away with those leisure classes. It was, I think, a huge mistake. But that's my personal opinion.
We had to do it when I went back
Everybody had
eons ago.
You had to take 2 hours, so that meant 2 courses. And when we were physical education, made much different than it is now. Well, we don't even have a physical education department now. But ours was, we had to learn 16 different sports, and we had to become at least to average level in all of them, and you had to excel in 4 of them. So it was very much, it was a very difficult major to go through at that time. We had to have our sciences that we took were those that now are pretty much pre-med type things, so that we would know all the way the body worked and the physics of it. And much different. I wish they had stayed with that as well, but they didn't.
So what were your 4 specialties? Golf and swimming?
Golf, swimming, softball, and what was my 4th one? Softball. Oh, gymnastics.
Gymnastics, okay.
Yeah. And I ended up being the gymnastics coach at Emporia State only for 2 years, and then we moved. So fortunately, I didn't have to do any more because I never considered myself an excellent gymnast by any stretch. I did know, but I knew the game. I knew the sport, and whatever the sport was that I was teaching. Swimming and softball were really my 2 best, and golf would probably have been 3rd. Yeah.
Had you played in high school?
No, we didn't. Now I swam, and I swam competitively. We swam. They had sort of like they do now, the AAU. We had organizations then that sponsored kids in the summertime to do their sport, and mine was swimming. So. You go back historically over sport, and it's pretty interesting to see how women. When I went back to Emporia State to teach during the Vietnam crisis, that was in '68, and I was there until 70, 71 or 72, and that's when Title IX, of course, all came about. And I was very active with that. Took 3 gymnasts to the Olympic trials in College Park, I believe it was, Pennsylvania. Some of the trials that it wasn't like the last one, but it was where they had competed enough that they were good enough that they could qualify. And that would have been in 71. And the school didn't even want to finance us because it's women's sports. That doesn't mean much. And we didn't have sports like they do now. Not in Kansas anyway. They didn't have. We had what we called intramurals, which meant that you worked with a little small body of towns that you could compete with, but it wasn't really organized sport like they have now.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always not resented, but it makes it. I would have been active in all of my sports competitively, but we couldn't. We just did it among ourselves and among local towns.
Not girls basketball in high school.
No, they didn't have girls basketball in high school. Yeah, they didn't have girls basketball. The only thing we had really to compete in was swimming, and that was it. And I did a lot of that. But even then, you didn't have any, there was no goal to go to college with it because there wasn't any scholarship for it. When I went to college, I competed with the boys. I actually trained with the boys. The head coach knew me and he had watched my swimming. And so I trained with the boys to compete in activities that were available to women at that time. But it wasn't college sponsored. And even in high school, we just didn't. We had activities. We didn't have competitive sports, which sounds strange because it's not that many years ago, really. I mean, if you think about it, well, it's a long time in some people's lives, but I mean, 50 years doesn't mean much historically. At how different it was at that time compared to now. That's why I tell the kids that all the time when they're here, that you have no idea what your parents fought for and your grandparents to get you to this stage.
That's true. Okay, and then in 81, you all ended up in Oklahoma.
82.
82.
Yeah, 82.
Why Cushing?
Dan had an offer to work in a business here that they eventually wanted him to take over in Cushing. And we didn't even know where Cushing, Oklahoma was. And in fact, living in Kansas, Oklahoma was like, who would want to live in Oklahoma? And I said, where is it, Dan? He said, it's in Oklahoma. I said, when are we moving? And he said, in 2 weeks. So we loved it. It was a great town, but we really loved it there. But it was a business that brought him there, and then he ended up deciding he wanted his own business. So he purchased his own business, but it was housed in Stillwater. So then we ended up moving over here.
And then you worked here. Okay, so do you remember your first day on the job?
On this job
No,
or on the job over there?
Over there.
I do. I came in as if I count my full time, I came in as an advisor, and I had done advisement when I was at Emporia State, so I was very familiar with it. But the role of advisement at Emporia State was much different than it was then and still is now. The advisors there were true advisors. They were either faculty. We had no professional advisors as such. You were tied with someone that was in your profession, and they mentored you for 4 years through your college career, and we all expected to graduate in 4 years. The degrees were mainly 127 hours plus, and we took 18 hours a semester, and we all were mentored by a faculty member who also helped us get jobs, and the phenomenal advising system that we had at that level. When I came here, I was not considered adjunct anymore, or faculty or visiting instructor, but I was strictly an academic advisor. And I did it because my kids were all growing and I needed it. I wanted to go back to work. And so I took this position, loved it, loved all the staff, but I saw that the advisor role was something that was much different than what I had anticipated it would be. It's really what I call, and I still say it, a clerking position. It's you do scheduling with kids. Well, that's not, to me, I'm going to get into an opinion here, but that's not what advisement is about. Advisement is about taking the kid from step one and walking them through the whole process, not just working up a schedule. And I was honestly, I was disappointed with that part of it, which is why I ended up taking the director's position so that I could change, at least attempt to change the whole methodology with regard to advisement, that we really take them, we aren't faculty, but we'll take them, mentor them, care them, nurture them, take them from their parents' home and take care of them for 4 years. And had lots of experiences doing that, where I was much different than other people on campus, the way they viewed advisement. It's still there, I hate to say, but it's still, some see it as you have 15 minutes like this to work with your advisor, and that's it. That's all you see them the whole semester. I literally was with my advisor every day, and that just doesn't exist anymore.
Were you able to make a few changes though?
Oh golly, yeah, I made a lot of changes. Got in a lot of trouble a lot of times because I was kind of in conflict with the general way advising was supposed to work. And so I had a few reprimands about it, but I just went ahead and did what I wanted to do, and it worked, and I got awards for doing it. So I figured I was doing something right. The kids were happy, and the parents were happy, and I got a lot of, if it hadn't been for you, I could never have gotten through college kind of comments. So I knew it was working. I never had a doubt about what I was doing was right. And I was known as a student advocate, and that hasn't changed in the 40 years I've been here. So it's not about spoiling them, it's about nurturing and taking care of them.
About how many would be in your caseload, for lack of a better word?
I had 400 when I left. When I left the college, I had 400. And, but it's the way you do it. Not every student needs that kind of time. That's, to me, advisors should be available to students with an open door. They shouldn't have to always, they should be, if a student wants to come in a day, they ought to be able to see their advisor. And that leads me to this one. That's the way this is set up. So we see them. If they're here and they need help, they're here. And so, yeah, I made a lot of changes in the 10 years that I was there and made it much more friendly. It wasn't such a sterile environment where kids had to come in and make appointments. And I tried to work diligently with the faculty members to develop a system where we interacted with them, where they could help the students as well. So we set it up so that students went to specific people for certain majors. That way they were close to the faculty. So if you had an English professor that didn't really want to advise, and I would say, but you have to be involved with us because this kid is an English major. So you need to know them. And so I worked with the faculty. Some wanted to, some didn't. Some were really good at it, some weren't. But eventually we changed the whole climate of the place. And then after 10 years, then I left and came over here. So.
Well, let's talk about how that occurred. I've heard stories, but I want to hear you tell how that
the
happened.
Story is there were some things going on at that time here. We lost 11 before I got here. I need to qualify that one. I wasn't here yet, but well, the first time. Now I take this back. Let's back it up to the mid '80s. In '80, before I went full time, before '88. I was over here in '85, '86, that time frame. Marty Sargent was working in football in some capacity. I don't remember what it was. And he gave Betty Abercrombie, who was my graduate advisor and my mentor over in physical education and health. And she recommended, he was looking for somebody who could come over and work in football and work with some guys. There would be about 10 to 20 guys that needed kind of a mothering role or somebody who could watch out after and make sure they get to class. And they didn't even have an academic unit like that. They had one. Dale Rourke was the head of what would be called this unit now. It was head of academics, but he was actually an ex-coach, a wrestling coach. And he headed up the office for academics because that was when the NCAA had started to come in with some rules that needed to be followed. And he had talked to Marty, and Marty says, well, we need these football players to get more assistance. So he was recommended to talk to Betty Abercrombie, and she came to me and she said, would you be interested in doing this part-time? And I said, I guess. I mean, I like kids and I love athletics. So I came over and worked that year over here with football. And some of the kids that I was working with were my advisees over, the ones that I was teaching, not advisees at that point, but I was teaching at that point. And so like some of the golfers were that I knew. I knew a lot of the coaches and I knew a lot of the kids just from my association in PE. And so I stayed over here for that year, and then I was offered the full-time position. So I was actually here in the mid-'80s, left, was offered a position over here, and I didn't take it at that time because I really liked the idea of going across campus and working over in education and seeing what I could do there. And then 10 years later, They had some issues. I don't like to go into all that, but they had some issues over here with the football program, and there were 11, I believe it was 11 or 12 kids starters that they found out that they were ineligible in August right before school started. And it was not a good scene. And so the president, who was President Halligan at that time, told me I was coming over here. He asked me, but it was pretty firm that he wanted me over here. And he laughs. If you ever want to talk to somebody that knows about that, he does. And so he told the provost that he wanted me over here. And so I applied for the position, and they did a thorough search. They did a national search, and the president wanted me here. So this is where I ended up.
Did he come to your office and actually?
He gave me an award someplace. I think there's one over there. He said, "You're the kind we need. We need a mother. We need somebody who will be the matriarch to these boys and can handle the coaches." Well, I already knew all the coaches. I mean, I knew it because I'd worked over here before, so I knew the system, and I enjoyed working here. But I didn't know the NCAA rules very well at all. I had to learn all that when I came over. But it was more about, they knew that my first interest was always for the students. It wasn't about athletics. It wasn't about the college, actually. It wasn't about the university. It was about the kids. You have to keep the kids on track to get someplace. So, and he knew that. So and that's what he'd been looking for. So I ended up here.
So did the early NCAA rules say that you could or couldn't call parents?
No, they didn't have much to do with that. Now the federal government did, but
Early on?
yeah, well, they still do. I mean, all your FERPA.
Well, I know now, but I didn't know back then.
Oh yeah, it was still just as bad back then. But nobody, I would be sitting here with a student talking to the parents. So yeah, the NCAA didn't say much about that.
You can imagine, were there times when you said, "Don't make me call your mother"?
All the time. All the time. Or I'd say, "I know your dad," or "I know your mother," and that's all it would take. And yeah, times have changed with students. But those were tough times. A year after I had taken the job, I wondered why I had done it, because I was perfectly happy in the College of Education and I loved what I was doing. But it was sort of after 10 years, it was a challenge. It was something new. I knew it was going to be tough. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it was going to be as tough as it was, though. We didn't have really a good facility. We were housed in the wing, one hallway of Bennett Hall. Mm-hmm. And there were only 3 of us, Alan Good, Agatha, and I were the 3 lead. Then we had an administrative assistant who had just been hired. And one fellow, Matt Pickering, who was here, but then he left to go to another school. And that was it. I think we had 1 or 2 graduate students that worked there. And now we have 13 full-time employees and lots of graduate students and lots of help. So my job has gotten easier in some ways, harder in others, but easier in that way. And that I have people who are phenomenal staff that work here. We didn't at that time. So it was all, it was just the 3 of us basically that we were, and they had study halls, with which I absolutely disagree that you should even have. And I mean, we'd be here 7, 8 in the morning until sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, why on God's green earth did I take this job? I mean, I was still very involved in my family life, and it was rough. Those first few years were really, really rough and tough, and I wasn't sure that I'd made a good decision. And then things started as usual, and jobs, they started falling into place. And so we moved again. They moved us to the basement of Bennett. At least we had more room, and I could start to develop some programs, develop some things with library. They introduced a library science 1111, I think it was. It was Introduction to the Library, and I met lots of nice people over in the library, and they let us use some of their facilities, and so it was kind of a nice arrangement with them. And then I really had to mend some fences that had been broken with faculty and try and have them realize that we weren't the bad folks over here. You're still dealing with students, no matter what job it is, you're dealing with students. And that took a long time. I mean, I'd say it took me probably 10 years before I really gained the trust that I had people who had written to me, "You've gone to the dark side," and I thought, oh my gosh, what has happened on this campus that people think this of athletics? But there were a lot of things happened during those times too. We've been put on probation previous to me being here, which I didn't know because we didn't even live in Oklahoma at that time.
Mm.
So a lot of bad things had happened in athletics, and the rules weren't being enforced, and so there was a bad image of what athletics was. So it was a long time before we could at least clear our part of it from doing what we do rather than what they think we do. So it was interesting times. I should have forgotten about those things. Conversation brings it all back up.
I'm thinking it wasn't a 40-hour-a-week job, and it wasn't a 5-day-a-week.
No, it was a 24/7, literally 24/7. I'd get calls in the middle of the night. Somebody was in jail, and I can't do anything about it because the NCAA says we can't help them. And so there's just all kinds of things that happened during those days that don't happen anymore. And we have gotten to we work normal hours now, which we didn't used to. And the worry of keeping them eligible when you're dealing with 18-year-olds who don't always do what they're supposed to do. And then the rules tightened up in the NCAA, which became almost impossible to keep up with the rules. The rule book, it's over here somewhere, but we always used to laugh. We said, when the rule book's bigger than the Bible, it's too big. So we had to learn all the rules, and we'd go to conferences to learn all the, it just was a very taxing type of profession. And I've kind of made it now so it's back to taking care of the kids and let the kids take care of their own business. So it's less stressful now than it was 10 years ago.
So it's still more than a 40-hour-a-week today?
Oh, yeah.
Today?
Oh, yeah. Definitely still more than 40 hours, but at least it's not 24/7. So we try to find some time to ourselves over here now. Still too many hours compared to what we should be doing, but it's there.
Well, when you first came over here, what would your caseload be? How many student
Well-
athletes would you be responsible?
Well, we have usually between 500 and 600 student athletes. So I had 400 that I was advising, but the responsibility for those 400 were not as great as the whatever I would have over here. I'm responsible for all of them over here, but I have help. When I first came over here, I would have said probably a couple hundred each to each of the three of us. But the responsibilities are so much different. I can't even compare advisement on campus to what we do. We literally know what these kids are doing all the time. Not all the time. I hesitate to say all the time because that's not true, but we are involved with the students on a one-to-one. We know them. We know what they're doing. We know their roommates. We know their study habits. We know their family life. You don't have that with advisement on campus, nor do you have the responsibility to find those things out. Whereas here we do. In order to find out how we can get them to be successful, we have to really understand the student. And we work with the coaches on them. The coaches will tell us some of the problems you might have. If it's a good student or poorer student coming in, we'll know that. It's really like a family function. All of us, it takes a village over here to keep all these kids going with all their activities on the sport, or whatever sport they're participating in, and go to school and make all the rules work. So it's a full-time job. Lots of moving parts, and they don't always work well together. It's one of those, they have to mesh in order for everything to go well. And sometimes another department will get busy doing something else, and they don't see the urgency of what we need, or vice versa. So it's a puzzle that is continually has moving parts.
Well, when you say their roommates and their families, do you meet them? Do you meet them face to face?
A lot of times we do. Yeah, a lot of times we do. I just chatted with one of my freshmen today and asked him who his 3 roommates were. And because then once we get to know them, we can sometimes identify issues that we're having, because it could be that there's influence from one roommate to the other. And we just know a lot more about the kids than most of them do on campus. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying we do. And if something happens with a student and a faculty member calls us, we have instant contact with that student. we call the coach and say, hey, I need to see so-and-so. And they're in my office within 5 minutes. So it's different than on campus when they can't get them to react to emails or texts, letters, whatever.
Are faculty more willing to let you know if there is a problem?
They're better than, they're better. But unfortunately, I think when you get in a school of this size, and the classes get larger and larger, I try to imagine myself teaching a class if I would know all the kids in my class, and I wouldn't, not by the numbers that we have now. So I would say no, that's still not, this, mainly the faculty feel like it's the student's responsibility to get through school. They forget that they're 18 years old and they still need some help to get through. It's not, I don't think it's that they don't care, it's they don't have a way that they've figured out anyway to get to know the students well enough. Now, some of them are excellent, so I know it can be done, but not all of them will do it.
Time management seems to be the big challenge, maybe teaching the ones coming in at least.
Yeah. Well, time management's a problem for faculty as well. You know, we all have time. We all have time management problems.
That's true.
I think probably our kids are better with time management than most faculty or most adults, because they have to. They have to in order to function, to get through it. They're up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they're working until sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night, including their sport in that. So then travel on top of that. They do, I think, exceptionally well with time management. But time management of their own doing, not what faculty want them to do or coaches want them to do, or all the other people that are entities that are out there that are placing demands on their time, the media. It's tough to keep them on schedule.
I mean, it's like they're doing a full-time job in addition to being a full-time student.
Yeah, it is.
In addition to, being a young person too.
It is, but it's not a lot different from other people who have full-time jobs. You have people who are mothers that go to school, fathers that go to school, businessmen, women that go to school. So it's just that they're younger usually and haven't had an opportunity yet to be on their own and still be given the responsibilities that they're faced with here. And then there's so much more pressure on the kids now to perform at such a high level that they always have 5 or 6 people behind them pushing them to take their position. So they put as the primary focus their sport sometimes rather than school. Most often they do.
Well, you mentioned the number of staff increased. What are some of the staff positions you have now?
They're very, very carefully defined. Agatha takes care of, and when I say takes care of, she's the mentor, advisor, counselor, whatever you want to call her, of soccer, equestrian, women's tennis, women's basketball. I think that's it, 4 sports. And she's also in charge of all the scholarship dealings with books, who can get books, who can't, who can. We have to have somebody down here that kind of maintains who gets what, because non-scholarship kids are not allowed to get some things that the scholarship kids can get, and that's by NCAA rules. So she handles all that. Alan is in charge of baseball, men's track, men's tennis, and then he is our eligibility. We call him our eligibility guru because he's the one that has to track all the eligibility across all 18 sports. And then he works with certification, the registrar, to verify. They're kind of a double check and balance system. Connie, of course, she takes care of all of us. She's our savior most of the time, keeps us on schedule, and she's the front person that everybody sees when they need to check out books, or they need to get a blue book, or they need to get an orange Scantron as opposed to a green Scantron, and all those kind of pens, pencils, and such. Chantel Quick and Chico Herring were both advisors across campus that applied for the position over here, and both of them are relatively new. They've been here about a year. Chantel, I think, has been at OSU for 5 or 6 years, but she's only been here a year. In fact, she just finished her year this last week. Chico has been over there 3 years, I think, at total at OSU, and he's been here a year, about a year and a half. They both advise football only. And when I say advise, they're the ones that the kids will go to their advisor on campus, then they get a schedule put together, then they come over here, and we have to change it accordingly as to how it'll fit with football. And then, and that's all they do. I mean, they work specifically with their assignment. We have 100 and right now I think we have about 130 on the team, so they split them. One takes one group and one takes the other group, and then they help each other as need be. Then Mike Noteware he heads up all of our AT, takes care of all the computers, hires the tutors, hopefully doesn't have to fire any tutors, but we haven't had to lately. So he does all the hiring of the tutors. And then upstairs we have Jeremy Cook is part-time and he works with wrestling only. Amber is Damacone. I was trying to think of her married name. Amber Damacone is the head of the writing center. We have a writing center that mirrors what we do on campus. And that's what she does. And we have writing for all subject areas, not just composition. And they help them with, anything that has to do with writing. Then Jonine Cook is what we call a learning specialist. We have 4 learning specialists, which we're going to change the title on this because they started out as that, but now they've blossomed into some other things. But she deals with everything except football, men's basketball, softball, women's men's golf. Other than that, she takes care of those. She heads up what we call the facilitator program with the other sports. And that is the person who, she has assigned so many people to work with to make sure they get their assignments done. And then she hires facilitators. She might hire you if you retire, you come over and work with them on time management, getting their assignments in on time. They keep files on all the students about what they have to do. Every student has to bring all their syllabi to them. Okay. And they go through everything they're going to have to do for the semester, and they outline it for the whole semester. And then they work with students individually. So she oversees those sports and the facilitators that work with her. And that's that group. And then we have Amy Randolph, who does all the other sports, men's basketball, softball, men's, women's golf. I think that's all she has. So she does the same thing Jonine does, but with different sports. And then Mark Hickey is newly hired. He's been a tutor here for a long time in the writing center, but then we hired him as a learning specialist, and he works specifically with football day to day. Same thing as the facilitators do, only more extensive. He deals with a lot, the full spectrum, good student to poor student. Nikki Jones is the academic coordinator, academic manager. I don't even know what her title is. I think it's academic manager for football. So she oversees all the people that are up there that deal with football. And she's the one that hires all the facilitators. So we have a big crew working with all these kids. Yeah, a lot of people. It takes a village to get them all through.
And what are the hours now? Just for this to be open?
We're open from 7 till 11 every day.
7, 8.
Except Saturday and Sunday. Saturday we're not open at all. Sunday, because they're usually competing anyway. Sunday, we send them to the library, I might add, instead of being here. Sunday it's 2 till 10.
2 till 10. And then how do you handle when they have to travel?
Well, it depends on the sport. Sometimes we have people travel with them if we need to. But with the online things anymore, it's not quite as difficult because COVID helped us in that way, in that faculty now understand that you don't have to be in a classroom to do things. There are other methods, so we work with them on that. We'll go, if I'm traveling with basketball, Amy and I will both travel, and we'll go with the team. We'll set up an area where they can study. We'll set up a tutor area. Not tutoring. We don't tutor. We just make sure they do the work. But we're the ones that if there are issues with it somehow, then I'll get on an email a teacher and say, hey, we're having trouble. We're sitting in New York and we can't get, the lines aren't working. They're supposed to be taking a test. We have nobody here to help them get on with it. It's just, we kind of serve as their mouthpiece to help them and work with the faculty. But other than that, they do pretty well. The travel, they're gone a lot. I mean, we put a lot of the responsibility on the kids to talk to the professors or instructors, whatever it may be. It may be a graduate student, but it's their responsibility to talk to them. Then if there's an issue, they bring it to me, and I work with that faculty member.
Like on a road trip, how much time would be designated for study, homework time?
It just depends on the sport, and it depends on if you're going for a big tournament. They have a lot of time that they have to spend with the media and the press, all those kinds of folks, and they have practice time. So we work with whatever the coaches allow us. It might be one time, it might be 9 to 10 at night. It might be 8 to 9 or 10 in the morning. So it just depends on what. I will say this, the coaches are really good about allowing us whatever time we need when they're on the road. All of them are. We don't have any issues with that. It's just trying to figure out the best time. And mentally, if they've just had a bad game and we're scheduled to have them at 10 o'clock that night, that's not when we want to work with them because their brains are not functioning at that time. They're still on the loss that they have or the win, whichever way it is. So it really is sort of individualized by sport as to what we need to do. But all of them are allowed time on the road to study.
Wow, through the years you've had several all-academic All-Americans.
Yeah, lots of them. I can't keep track of all of them anymore. Used to be kind of an oddity, but now we're surprised when we don't have 10 or 12 a year. So
Really, that many?
yeah, they're doing really well.
And why do you attribute that to, the increase in numbers?
I think just the change in the times and changes coaches, and it's like, how does history happen? It just does. I don't think it's any individual. I do think, and I hear it from the kids all the time, that there's a mentality in the AC that we're here to help them. We are definitely here to help them. It's not about our growth, I'm telling you for sure, or any money. It's not compensation. It's all of the folks that are hired in this AC are people who love to work with students. They want to see them succeed. They're what we dream the whole world would be. And I mean that sincerely. So as long as we keep people like that working here, we'll be successful. And it's tough to hire them because it's hard work. It's things like, for example, Nikki might schedule an appointment with the kid and he decides he's too tired to come. So he doesn't say anything, he just doesn't come. So she's sitting here at 7 or 8 o'clock at night waiting for a student to come. Now, in most areas, people would say, well, it's too bad we're through with him. I'm not going to deal with him anymore. And she won't do that. She'll call him the next day and say, hey, I missed having you last night. You were here at 8 o'clock. You were supposed to be here at 8. And I say, I was just so tired. I should have called. Well, then she takes that as a learning experience and works it through with them till eventually, most of them, I can't say all of them, but most of them buy into the system and realize that. And it's a teaching moment for Nikki. She goes in and can teach them what's wrong about the behavior that they exhibited. It's hard work is what it is. And it's a tremendous commitment. And some people just aren't cut out for that. It's sort of like parenting. Some are good parents and some aren't.
Have you realized or come to think that there's a difference between the genders? Like if or even even age, if age helps, what?
I tease the boys all the time. If not for you, we wouldn't have jobs. Because the girls are more mature, and keeping in mind this is a generalized statement, but the girls are more mature, they're more dedicated to their study. They don't have the professional opportunities that the boys do, or that the boys think they do. There are a lot of things that go into that, but the girls definitely take care of business way better than the guys do across all sports.
That's probably true across all campus too.
I think so too. I think probably. Maybe it may not be. I don't know. Honestly, I didn't notice so much of that when I was across campus in education, though. Now, yes, I had some guys that weren't really good students, but I also had some girls that weren't really good students. So I can't speak for across campus now. I do know that over here that we have some very good students in all sports that are male, but they are definitely, that's where the bulk of our energy goes. Now, the girls on the flip side, we have more emotional things to deal with. So we have this over here and this over here. You know, it's kind of a balancing act between them.
And so it's not just all academics. You get into some personal,
no.
personal side of things too.
Well, because if you think about it, the only way we can get to know them, we know what's going on in their lives. And that's what takes the time. Just talked to a couple girls this morning that were having a few issues, and it took a couple of hours to sit down and knock it out.
What do they call you?
They call me Mom.
Do they?
Yeah. And that started years ago. I don't even know how it really started. I remember Barry Trammell wrote an article one time, and he said, she's like a mom. She's hard on them when she needs to, and giving them hugs when she needs to. And there was one of the articles that he sent me, and one of the coaches picked up on it. And in fact, I think it was Coach Sutton that originally did that. Started saying, well, she's like a mom. And so then the kids just started calling me Mom, and it went. It wasn't anything that anybody introduced. You know, I don't ever remember a specific time it happened. It just, over the years, it started. I told him now I'm a grandma. So, oh gosh, years. Whew.
You've seen a lot of players go by, haven't you?
Yeah, just had one of my old ones came back from 2003. He came in and he's been really super successful with one of these training things. He's got 3 girls now. He was showing me all of these girls. There'll be another one come over. He said, I'm going to bring 4 over, because and both of them played in the pros. They both played football in the NFL. But they talk about, we were laughing about all the funny things that happened when they were here, and how we had to beat them over their heads to get them to go to class, and now they're doing the same thing with their own kids. Yeah, it's fun. I have a whole file of nothing but cards from kids after they graduated, or even when they're here, about thanks for what the whole center does for us.
So the majority of them appreciate it.
Oh, all of them. I don't think there are any of them that don't. Even the ones that don't do well, they blame themselves. Some of our best recruiters for new kids coming in are the ones that either haven't been successful or had something happen to them when they either weren't eligible or they had to get in trouble with the coaches about something, and they'll say, hey, if not for them, we wouldn't have even made it. So I never feel a lack of appreciation from the kids, ever.
When they bring in new recruits, do they come through here?
Mm-hmm.
Do they?
Yeah, I just saw one this morning.
To introduce
Yeah.
the system.
Yeah, we had one this morning, and we'll have some more tomorrow. Basketball today and football tomorrow. Yeah, recruiting is a huge part of our jobs, especially mine.
To explain what's expected or
Well,
what's available,
offered,
what's
not
available.
even expected. It's more how we operate and what we do, what we offer, what's here for the student who's not a very good student, or the one that wants to be a Rhodes Scholar. You know, we have the full spectrum. That's what's so interesting about this job. We have kids who have no idea what they want to be. They don't want to be here for school, and they'll tell us this. They don't like school. They've never done well in school because they don't like school. You know, you'll have that kind. Then you have a kid over here that wants to be an astrophysicist and build rockets. You know, so it's the full spectrum of kids, females and males.
Never a dull moment.
Never. Never. We go home exhausted every day. Every day. And we go, how do we do this every day? Because it's emotionally exhausting. You know, you go from getting frustrated with kids who aren't going to class to the ones who can't understand why kids don't want to go to class. Mm-hmm. And it's this turbulent little wave that we stay on all the time. But I think the difference between the people who are here, and I'm not speaking badly of anybody else, but they love what they do, and in this job we get a feeling of satisfaction from helping people. If you're a helping person, you're gonna love it here. if you're one that thinks it's an 8 to 5 job, you're in big, deep doo doo. Because it is not an 8. You don't turn the lights off at 5 o'clock.
You can schedule a little bit though, but
You can schedule them more. That's why we leave them open till 11,
Yeah,
because
be
we know that we never know what's going to happen. And every day is a new day. Every day is a new day with us. I think it is with everybody in their own jobs, but the longevity of our people speaks to the love of the job. I mean, we've had, of our 13 full-time staff, six of them have been here more than 20 years. And the remainder of them have been here. Well, we've hired 2 new ones. But other than that, they've all been here between 10 and 15.
Well, that does speak.
Yeah. There's not much movement over here, which speaks to the fact that they are dedicated to their work. And it's certainly not about the money, because they don't get anything compared to what they should. Not the amount of work they put in.
Well, with so many hours spent doing this sort of thing, what do you do for your own self-care?
Well, I have my grandkids, remember, and they keep me busy. And my kids have a lake house. We go up to the lake house, and I enjoy that on the weekend. Not as much as they want me to, because they're frustrated that I don't spend more time with them. But we have family dinners not every Sunday. We try to do it every Sunday, but all 3 of my kids, well, I have 2 of them here in Oklahoma and 1 in Edmonds. So we try to have family dinner on Sunday. I have really kind of given up my hobbies because of this job. One was golf, which I absolutely love. And I keep saying I'm going to get back into it. In fact, the golf team brought me a new golf bag today. Says, here, we're trying to tell you, you need to get back to golf. You were a good golfer. You need to get back to golf. So I'm hoping that I'm not going to do it in this heat, but maybe toward the end of the summer when things cool down a little, I might try and get back and do some golf. I have a swimming pool, so I can swim.
Okay.
I do a lot of gardening and planting and the usual stuff everybody does when you don't have anything else to do.
You do take care of yourself.
Yeah, I do.
As much as encourage them to do the same.
Yeah. It's a great life. It's a tough life. It's a stressful life, because just about the time you think everything's running smoothly, something happens and it hits. And we had a young man lost his brother that was killed the day before yesterday, and you get to deal with those horrendous things that happen to you. We've had a lot of those over the years, of family members that have either been shot or accidents. We've lost some of our students that way. So it's, you become a big family is what you become. Sometimes a dysfunctional family, but nonetheless we're a family. And it's tough when you hear those things happening to kids that you know.
And even when it's the bigger ones, like the 2011 and 2000.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
2001
when we heard of Kurt Budke and Miranda, and I didn't know the pilot and his wife. I didn't know them, but Kurt and Miranda were in here. In fact, I have a picture over here. The last tournament I played golf with was at the Kurt Budke tournament. I was traveling football. I was at Iowa State, and it was on November 17th, and my birthday is the 18th. So I heard it the morning of the 18th that it had happened. I got a call at 7 o'clock in the morning and said what had happened. It was devastating, just beyond. And the basketball was horrendous. It was just, I don't even know how to talk about it. I had just talked to the kids that were on the team and the trainers the night before, because they had given me a jacket that I told them, I said, I want one of those jackets that when you go out in the rain, it sheds all the water, but it's warm too. And they brought it to me, and it was big enough that it could have gone to my ankles, because it was one of the guys had gotten it for me. He said, hey Mom, we got you this. They gave me this jacket, so I still have it. But I was actually the night that it happened. I was at a football recruiting dinner upstairs, which is what was the varsity room, but it's not like it is now. And I had gone home, and one of the chefs said, here, take some of this cheesecake, because there was a whole lot of it that was left over. And I said, I will. I'll take it. My brother's visiting. I'll take it to him and my husband. Well, I walked into my house, and on the TV between them, was a picture of the air crash, but at that time I didn't know what it was. But my son is a pilot, was flying at that time out of Flagstaff, and there had been this devastating air crash, and my husband turned around and he said, Marilyn, there's been an air crash, but it's not Brad. That's the first thing that came out of his mouth, but it's not Brad. And I said, who is it? And he said, it's some of your boys. And I said, what do you mean it's some of my boys? And he said, about that time he started to talk to me and the phone rang, and it was, I had a call from the basketball office, and they wanted me to come up to the basketball office. And Coach Sutton had asked me to come up there. And so he sat down and told me everything that happened. And Andre Williams had called, that was the phone call. It was Andre had said, Mom, we've lost some of the players. I said, what do you mean you've lost some of the players? He said, well, the 3 planes, one of them didn't make it back. And I was just devastated. Of course, at that time, I didn't know who was on it and who wasn't. And then the next day, I started getting calls from my colleagues, other places, because they knew I traveled with basketball. So they were calling my house and calling my husband. And that's when we still had landlines. And they were trying to find out if I were on the airplane. So, yeah, it was, I just can't even explain it. It was awful.
And in your role as in academics, how did that, probably the next week or two was just.
Oh, I could show you some, if I could find them. I mean, they're at home probably, but pictures of, well, we had to go, all the people that were still alive from the basketball, it was like a big basketball family. We had all the funerals to go to. And I can remember the boys, 2 of them, saying, Mom, we can't go to any more funerals. We just can't go to any more funerals. And I said, well, we have to. That's our role in this. But it was, they just wanted to play basketball. They just wanted to get out of this life of this horrendous thing that had happened and get back to some normalcy. Mm-hmm. They needed to be back with each other in the sport with which they were comfortable and get away from all the sadness. And it was a tough time.
Did it seem to improve that aspect? Did it seem to improve after the game that they won, that first game that they played after?
I think, honestly, as soon as the kids could go work out, they could play ball, and they didn't have to be around so many people, was when it happened. Because they needed to get away from all the notoriety of it and all the people talking to them and the people constantly saying something, because first of all, they didn't know how to respond. They were hurting themselves. It's like any death. It just was compounded by the gravity of so many it happening too, and the horrendous way it happened. But it was really, they needed normalcy. They needed to be away from all the, for lack of a better word, the hubbub about it. It was, they couldn't get back to their normal life because there was too much publicity and too much happening. And it continued for such a long period of time. It literally was that whole semester. They were just glad to get back to just let us shoot some buckets.
Well, when the 2012 homecoming crash probably wasn't as
that didn't hit the kids as much because it wasn't personal. It was to me because Bonnie was one of the people I worked with all the time. And so I hated, and another thing is that was our corner. That's where we just we didn't go to the parade that Saturday. And that's where we used to sit, in that same area. So it was not devastating to me in that we weren't there. I don't mean that, but I just thought it was ironic that that's usually where we sat, and we just didn't sit there. That we didn't go. And it was tragic because it was a colleague with whom I had worked for years, probably 20 some years. And I knew her husband, didn't know him well, but I knew him. And just losing a friend, a colleague, was tough for me. But most people around here didn't know the people. Empathy for the young lady that did it. A lot of empathy and sympathy, honestly, from people around here who really felt the pain that her dad was feeling and that she wasn't mentally right for whatever the reason. And just another tragedy. I mean, it's like life. Death's part of it, I guess. But it didn't. I didn't feel like it affected the kids in the same way because it wasn't one of their own. One of their own, in that it wasn't another athlete. They just.
Well, it changed the atmosphere for that one game in particular, the football game. That
it did, definitely. But the kids are so resilient. They just get us back to what we know. And it's hard for the public to do that because they want to show their sympathy and they want to show their empathy and their caring attitude, but the kids want to go just cheer for us, just back away a little. And that's what we saw from even with us. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to talk about the homecoming event. They thought it was horrendous. They thought it was awful. They didn't want to talk about it. And we're finding that with most of the kids. This one young man that's lost his brother, he said, "Well, I'll tell you about it when I get back." And it's sort of it's a way that they can deal themselves with their own sadness. So we don't talk to them a lot about it unless they want to talk.
Well, the facilities where we are today is right beside where the memorial is.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, I don't know, lingering impact from that necessarily?
No, I don't think so. Well, and the basketball memorials, both of them, especially the men's basketball accident and that memorial, these kids weren't even born.
That's true.
When that happened. That was in 2001, and these kids they hadn't been born. In fact, they have to ask us when they come in, "What is this?"
And do some of it.
And to us, it seemed like it was yesterday. But, it's that life goes on kind of. And they're not being disrespectful at all. It's not that. It's just that it's history that they don't know and they didn't know that it happened. And when we refer to it, we say, well, when the basketball crash happened, well, they don't even know what we're talking about. And we like not to talk about that to recruits anyway.
Mm.
It's not a good thing to encourage people to come.
Well, then let's talk about where we are. How did this come about? These facilities,
Golly.
Mitchell, the Joe and
Connie Mitchell.
Yep.
Actually, Joe and Connie Mitchell, and I love them to pieces. They're great people. They've done a lot for OSU. They've done a lot for athletics. But as far as this academic center, their name was put on it because of donations to athletics, not to the center. We've been hopscotched around we were in Wrestling Hall of Fame, underneath the stadium, Crutchfield, which doesn't even exist anymore, Bennett in 2 different places, upstairs on 2nd floor, which was taken over by somebody else. So the academic center was in all these different residences, I guess. And they were renovating Gallagher, and Coach Sutton and Coach Simmons had gotten together and decided that if they were going to renovate Gallagher, they were going to build an academic center. So they were really the 2 strongest proponents for having an academic center. And it's somewhat pieced together, to be honest with you, because it started out, we had enough money for 1 floor, but they didn't have enough money for 2 floors. So I told them, I said, well, at least build the structure, build the steel structure and put the electrical wiring and so on in, so that when the next donor comes forth or they get more money in athletics, they can finish off the 2nd floor. So they finished after we were down here for probably a year or so before, maybe longer than that, before they found some money they said we could finish part of the upstairs. I wanted 3 floors. They only gave us 2. That's a whole different story. But so they built the 2nd floor, and they were using it basically as a storage area. So they cleaned all that and gave us, they said, what do you want? Do you want this half or that half first? And I said, let's go with the classrooms that are going to be on this side. So they did the classrooms first, and then they left the other end totally wide open, but they put floor in it so we could go up and work on the floor. But we had no computers, no electrical access, any of that. So that was another process for a couple of years, and then they finally got it finished after. I suppose it was probably 5 years by the time we really got the whole center workable, so we could use all of it. And here we are. Now we're getting new carpet and new paint. It's the first time since 2001. Finally, and it needed it desperately.
Well, how many kids can be here at once?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. There are usually at least over 100, at least.
During the semester, at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Now it's just as quiet as can be because they're all in classes. But yeah, it serves all of them are over here at some point in time. They love it. They love the center. They call it the AC, and in fact, I had the two girls today that told me, they said, "This is where we love to be because it's so nice. We can say what we want to say. We have the old saying, what's said in the AC stays in the AC. So nothing goes back to coaches, nothing goes to trainers, nothing goes to anybody else. They can say what they want over here, and they can do what they want, and then they leave, and it stays here. So it's kind of their little private cave that they can come to, and they can be friends with each other. They can say what they want to each other, and there's no negative consequence from any of it.
Have you tried something that didn't work? Had lots of successes. Have you tried something that didn't quite?
Oh, I'm
quite
sure
work?
we have. Well, off the top of my head,
Well,
I can't
maybe
think of
not.
any though. I'm sure we've had some things that we've started, and I've had a couple of hires that didn't work.
Well, that's
I've had a few hires, and all of them were one was because all he wanted was to make more money and get a new title. And I said, this isn't working because those things will come as you get better at what you do. And then the other ones just didn't work out. We've lost a few. We've lost probably maybe 4 or 5 that I've had to suggest that they find something else. But other than that, the staff is just amazing. They are phenomenal. I said if they ever quit, I'm gone. I'm going right with them because they are amazing. I'm trying to think of something that didn't work.
I'm sitting
Now
here.
we've had things that get better. Like we'll start it out one way and they just get better. But I can't think of any that really have failed. We also have. We found that our international students weren't getting as much attention as they should, so we developed a position where Stephanie Coca, who was working there, I don't know if you know Stephanie, but now she's over all the ESL things for the Stillwater Public Schools. Anything that has to do with ESL is her ball game. And she studied here and ended up getting her PhD, and was really building a huge program for international students here. And then she got hired away at really the position she wanted. That was what we were kind of grooming her for anyway. I was grooming her for it on campus, but over the global studies program. But she got this one, which is exactly what she wanted. So that's kind of fallen a little bit since she's been gone because nobody really has the interest in it like she did. And she spoke fluent Spanish, so it was good for our Hispanic kids. And she could, because of her ESL background, she could work with anybody that was an international student that needed something as English as a second language. So that hasn't failed. It's just not been taken to the level that she had it. But it was a great program. She came down to me and she says, how about if I offer a class where we can enroll the international students and then we can work on them as an ESL program? So she did that, and we don't have somebody qualified to do that now. I kept thinking somebody across campus would pick it up, but they didn't. So I guess that's about the only one that I think has maybe gone down. It's not gone, it's just not been kept at the level. I guess that's a good thing, but I really can't think of anything that's failed.
Did you ever imagine, like when you came out of Emporia, that you would be
Heavens no.
doing this type of work anyway?
No.
What were you planning to do?
I have no idea. Let's see.
teach? You
Well, I
teach?
wanted to teach.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of like, and that's what I teach kids all the time. Life just happens. I wanted a family. So, and when I met Dan, I was thrilled that I finally met some guy that I might really love, because I really reached a point I thought, maybe this isn't going to happen. I wasn't terribly worried about it one way or the other, but I did want a family. And then once we got married, I wanted to raise my kids. I didn't want somebody else to raise them. So I wanted to stay home, and I thought that's going to affect my career, definitely. But I didn't have a career in this. I mean, this didn't even exist when I was young. I really think I wanted to go back to teaching, as I recall. Because I love teaching. And I wanted to teach at the high school level. Well, then it happened when I moved back to Emporia that I ended up at the college level. And so it just sort of happened. I didn't really plan it. It just happened.
And then you chose to go back and get your PhD here.
Yeah, and the reason I did was because my kids were, I was getting empty nest. I had stayed home for 17 years with it, really, because I couldn't do much when we were traveling as much as we were, and we were moving from one state to another, and I couldn't have a job for a year and then quit. So I was staying home with my kids. And then when my last one was in about 8th or 9th grade, I told him, I said, you know what, I did part-time work then, and I did a lot of substitute teaching while the kids were in school, because I loved being a teacher. I think it's the grandest profession ever. I wish we just paid it better, but yeah, that's interesting. I've not really thought about it that way, but why I planned what I was going to do. I think I had a plan, and God didn't seem to be there for it. It wasn't His plan, so I moved to the college level, which was probably a good idea too, because my humor and my way of working with kids is good at the college level.
Well, the reason to get a PhD was
because I empty nested. I needed to do something.
You just wanted one.
Yeah. And we were here, and I asked Dan. I said, "Babe, are we going to be here for at least a few years so I can finish this?" And he said, "Yeah, we'll be here at least 3." I said, "Okay, that's all I need." So I came over, talked to Betty Abercrombie. That I was in school that semester, and then everything fell in place over there, and it all worked out here. That it ended up that I had an opportunity to work full time, and then by that time, my kids, Brad was in, I think he was then he was the youngest, I think maybe 9th grade or 10th, something about that. He was old enough anyway, he could take care of himself, that's what I'm saying. And so I said, I think I'm going to work full time, and they went, "Oh, really? Who's going to cook for us?" That was the biggest problem was who's going to cook. I said, "Well, I'll still cook." So ended up full time, and then it's history after that.
And that
But
professor.
it wasn't anything I planned. I guarantee you, I didn't even plan to be an advisor. It was a job that was there, it was available, and I thought I can do that. That's a job everybody thinks they can do, and I really did feel like I could do it, and I had already had experience at Emporia State, so I thought I can do that. And I just happened to get hired. And I got hired because Don Siemens wanted somebody. There were so many athletes that were wanting to come over to education, and he didn't have anybody that knew the rules, and he didn't have anybody that worked with athletes. Well, I did, because I'd already done it over here, so it was just sort of one of those little star on the resume that said, yes, I can handle this. And he wanted me to be the advisor to student athletes, so I was. And then here I am. And I've been here, since 97, so 25 years.
And that particular professor was you consider your mentor?
No, I didn't. Oh, Betty Abercrombie was
yeah.
Definitely she was. She was a wonderful lady.
Have you had anyone in addition to her since?
No.
Like who do you turn to when you need?
I did turn to Dan. He was my sounding board, and now he isn't here anymore. So I don't know. I don't have professionally. There isn't anybody really on campus that has the same interests. Now I have some really good people that I work with and for. Jeanette Mendez is new, but she's very good to work with. Chris Francisco is phenomenal. He's one of those and he's really the one that I work with more than Jeanette now, because Jeanette's taken on her, the full provost position, so she has bigger fish to fry out there than working with us. She does work beautifully with us, but she's in a different role now. But Chris Francisco is trying to make some really good changes, I think, on campus that will help the instructional side of education. But I wouldn't consider him. I don't have anybody now that's really a mentor.
Well, and if this is the only unit like this in the Big 12,
It's the only one that reports to the provost like that. Yeah, the rest of them report to athletics, which makes it a lot different because you have one boss, and that's athletics. And if they don't like what you're doing, you do it their way, and we don't have to deal with that, fortunately. Can't think of anything else I need to tell you. That's a pretty full story.
yeah, just take us through a typical day, if there is one. I assume there's a typical day. Take us through what that might be for you.
Oh,
You
there
get here.
really isn't. It's
You get here at what time?
around 8:30, sometime in that time frame. One of the things that I am with our staff is they come and go. They're on flex schedule. They do what they need to do, and I think that's one of the reasons they like it so well. Is they are, if they have a bad morning, they just leave, and they'll come back at night, or they'll finish what they were doing the next day. And I like that because there are days that are much more stressful over here than others. And sometimes the kids are just difficult to deal with, or the coaches are, or whatever, something is going wrong in your day. They have to have some relief, and they do. They put in way more than 40 hours a week, so I'm not concerned how we get it. I can't say we have a typical day. I really can't, because Connie said to me yesterday, she said, Marilyn, you have to stop and focus. She said, I need you on one thing. We need to talk about the foundation right now. And I said, okay. And about that time, a kid walked in. And I said, okay, oh, hi, so-and-so. And away I went on with that student. And then a parent came in. And then a coach came in and needed something. And then another coach came in. And then some more kids came in. And Connie says, Marilyn, you've gone through 5 different things now. I need you to focus on this. That's a typical day.
Okay.
I mean, that really is a
Okay.
typical day, not just for me, but for everybody here, because we have what we call our open door policy, where if you come in, if you had walked in and I hadn't known who you were, or even if I did, I'd say, oh, hi, my name's Marilyn, what do you need? And in you would come, rather than you having to stop at the front desk and make an appointment and coming on my time rather than on yours. So in doing that, it makes it very chaotic all day long. We call it organized chaosm, and that's what it is. Organized chaotic activity is actually what we call it. We all have to be a little bit ADHD to even work here.
And then the happy days are graduation days?
No, not necessarily. By that time, it's just relief. And I mean that. Seldom, we don't even go to graduation usually. When we see the report that says they're all eligible, that is happy day.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because we already know they're going to graduate, and graduation is just one. In fact, that's one day when we know nobody's around. Some of us go. I went for a long time, and then I chose not to go anymore.
I know from time to time I see you down on the floor of the basketball court when they're having a reunion of some kind,
Yeah.
a team comeback or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, we do. Oh, we have lots of activities in which we're involved, all of us. And those are all good, fun times. I can only say that we all love what we do. We don't love everything every day. But overall, if you ask anybody here, they'll go, we really do love it. It's like we're exhausted all the time. And there aren't a lot of people, I think, that could function in this type of an environment, because it is chaotic, and it's constant change of plans. It's, even trying to make an appointment with you. It's, no, now she's got a meeting doing this, or there's always, it seems like we're always on demand. And coaches by nature they want it done yesterday. I love every one of them, and I mean it sincerely. They're great to work with. I have a great coaching staff, but man, especially in the recruiting, when we're recruiting, they have somebody in Uzbekistan that they have to have, and we have to have all the paperwork in by today. And I said, you haven't even gotten it to me. How am I supposed to evaluate something I don't have? And so it's just that their minds work in a boss mentality. I need it now. And I have to depend on you to get it to me, or you to get it to me, or you to get it to me. And if they're not in as big a hurry as those coaches are. And we understand why they need it. The people that we're working with don't. So that's probably our most frustrating, because I have no, and I keep telling them, look, I can't make admissions do something. They don't work for me. I can suggest it. I can work with all the people I know over there, but I can't get it done if they don't do it. And the coach will say, well, we have it by tomorrow. And so those are the things that wear me out. Now, nobody else has to deal with that stuff.
They repeat after me.
Yeah, repeat after me. I don't, yeah.
Well, you've got to see a lot of championship type teams through the years playing.
Yeah. Not enough of them. We should have had 4 of them this year.
Some final, well, yes.
We should have had 4. We should have had baseball, softball, men's golf, women's golf. All 4 should have had championships. The only one we got was equestrian. Yeah, there are a lot of good times, a lot of fun times.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the longer you work in, I don't care what the job is, the longer you work in a job, the more you see the failures that should have been successes in all aspects. I mean, should our graduation rates be better? Probably. Could they have been? I doubt it. Should something have worked better? Perhaps. But that's just, I think, being in a job a long time, and the excitement goes down a little as years go on about like championships. We're more worried about them going to class and getting through their lives than we are the actual championship. But we're still dedicated to them, and that's what they love. So.
Well, with COVID, can you still hug?
Oh, we hugged all the way through COVID.
Did you? I wondered about that. Yeah,
we're huge huggers around here. Even the kids are. I mean, they'll come in. The first thing they'll do is walk in the door and come over here and give me a hug. I mean, that's with all of us, not just me. They're very affectionate and loving, and they're good kids. We just don't have bad kids here, and we have great coaches and people work for them, the staff. It's a highly demanding job, not just ours, but athletics in general. It's you better be ready to do some work. You can't sit on things.
Let me check. We've covered.
It would make our life a lot easier.
That's the bulk of my questions. Do you have a highlight or two?
No. No.
Well, then my last question will be, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh, gosh. That's almost like an obituary, isn't it? Let me see.
Oh, it's when history's written. How do
Yeah.
you want him to remember Marilyn Middlebrook, Mom?
I because my primary focus has always been on the kids, I think it would be a person who genuinely sincerely cared about student development and the students and how they were able to succeed in their life after leaving here. I really would. That's because that's what I've done for all these years. As a student advocate, I'm known as a student advocate on campus, and sometimes that's battling. That's taking hard struggles to people who don't think the way I do. I actually went to a psychologist one time to ask him about a particular situation, and they said, well, you just document, and if it doesn't work, well, you've covered your stuff. And I said, it's not about me. I came to you to ask you how to help this student. It's not about me covering my butt. I want to know, how do I help this kid? So it's about being a student advocate, because we get all these rules and all these things into the way you handle things, but human beings aren't handled that easily. So I would say probably a student advocate, and one that always genuinely cared about the kids. I was the same with my family, so I still am. Mm-hmm. Like on my tombstone, she cared.
Okay. Well, I can see that, and have seen that through the years, just watching from where I sit.
Yeah, it is. A bit of a rebel, probably, because I had to, I used to tell my husband, I said, sometimes I sit in a room and I think I'm the only one that cares, that genuinely cares about these kids. And I really would feel that way. And I thought, that can't be. I can't be the only one that cares this passionately about these kids. But I would look around the room and I think, yeah, I really think they like their job, but they don't care about the kids. So, and sometimes that means putting yourself out to get hammered, to put your head out on the block.
Sounds like you need to be at least a regular guest speaker in the advising classes or something to teach the next generation.
They don't want to hear that. I've talked until I'm blue in the face, Tanya. It's Tanya. We've got Tanya Roan and Tanya Finchum. Tanya, you know who Tanya is? She's a judge here in town who teaches business law, or did until her husband died. So I always called her Tanya because I thought Tanya was Tanya, and she goes by Tanya. And she, at one time, she's Marilyn, it's Tanya. And I went, well, you should have told me that. I've known you for like 5 years. I don't know. I try and tell them, and they just don't listen. Sometimes they remind me of the kids over here. So I tell them, and they don't listen. I think it comes from your heart. You either have. We've tried to put some kind of, when we hire people, we try to put what is it that we're looking for, and it's just you almost care more about them than you do yourself. And there aren't very many people in this world that want to do that anymore. It's a job, which is sad. I just feel like these parents give these kids to us, and it's our job to take care of them. I have faculty that will be stinkers with me and then turn around when their kid comes, they want me to take care of them. So, it speaks well for what we do, but how do you teach that to somebody? To go to the extra mile to help somebody. It doesn't have to be a student, it's just helping people.
Well, perhaps some of the
Customer service.
True, that's even the
Customer
library
service.
would worry about that too. Maybe some of the students that have passed through here will come back.
Oh, we do. I have several of them on campus that have worked here. I have right now that still work here. And they said, it doesn't work over here. When we try to do this, it doesn't work. Nobody else wants to do it. And I go, yeah, well, I know what you're talking about. I mean, I understand that. And you can't teach that. You can tell them, you can model it, but you can't teach them because they have to have it in their heart. It has to come intrinsically motivated to help others. Most people like that are in the helping profession are that way. It's how do you teach somebody to care?
We need to clone you a few times.
Well, I've had that said many times, but I think I always felt like if I treated the person opposite from me the way I would want to be treated, or that my children would want to be treated, or I would want my children treated, that's the way I tried to do it. If I were sitting in their shoes, what would be their expectations of me? How can I do to, and sometimes it's, I get tough with the kids, but there's just I don't know, I just don't think you can teach it. I wish I could. I'd take a giant raise in salary and go promote it across the world. I just don't know that we can. You gotta care first before you can do anything.
Well, I wish you was lucky that you came our way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. I really am dedicated to it. But more than OSU, I'm dedicated to the kids.
To the kids.
It's about the kids. It's not about me, and it's not about my getting kudos for me. It's about them. And I get my satisfaction and my pay from when I hear, like the one that came back today, to come back, so I've got to show you my 3 kids, and he graduated. And he says because of staff here, it wasn't because of him, it was because of the staff that they got him through, and they did. And now he's doing real well. I get very passionate about it. I think that's probably a word that I need to use more frequently. You have to be passionate about your work. I don't care what it is. In my case, it happens to be about students, but it could be about research. It could be about writing a book. But have passion for what you do. Really think about it. And if you don't have that passion, you need to go find something that trips your trigger. Mine happens to be students. and has been since I first started teaching.
Well, I think you have to have an element of kindness
You do.
and an element of hope, being able to instill hope
Yeah.
in them too.
There's lots to it, but nothing works if you don't care.
That's
You know, if me getting home so that I can do my gardening or whatever, if that's more important than sitting here late with a kid, then I need to go get a new job.
and you're not there yet.
Nope, I'm not even close. I'm not even close.
That's good. Wow.
I do love it.
All right.
That'll be the hardest thing for me is when I have to leave. When someday I'll have to give it up.
Let me thank you. Sit down real quick.
Oh, sit down real quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to end with saying thank you for spending the afternoon with me. It's been great.